Now, before we get to Joe and Bob's proposition, anybody have anything else they want to say? About anything? You're not all familiar with Joe and Bob's proposition, so I'll let Joe and Bob present it. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
I thought you were going to introduce us.
Robert. All right. Just lay it out real quick, like. I have not mentioned it to anybody except this morning. I mentioned it to Kay and Paul. And they're the only ones who I've told. I didn't tell them just this morning. Just mentioned it. Go ahead.
Bob mentioned it to some people, and they know who they are.
Okay.
We're not using the time Friday night from after sign-offs or Saturday morning, or Sunday morning after sign-off Saturday night. This would be Saturday morning and Sunday morning, midnight to about 5 a.m. We're proposing to program rock and roll, and not top 40 type, not over and over same stuff. Hopefully to sell it at a later date at a regular rate card, and we think we can make it work. We can use the time that's not being used, do it ourselves, produce it ourselves, and be responsible to it ourselves since we work here anyway, rather than have another announcer or some other group come in and do this.
As we told Mr. Morgan before, we think that we can handle it quite responsibly because we've been here long enough to know the station's needs and desires and things which have to be fulfilled. And we think we can aim the program at a much broader spectrum of people than stations which regularly program this type of music attempt to do. We don't anticipate aiming this program at just one group of people. But anybody who'd like to participate, obviously this is going to be somewhat limited. Mr. Morgan probably, on his own accord, wouldn't want to listen to it if he were just a casual listener, and John Brett might not want to, but we think there's a substantial number of people within the Baltimore area and Westminster area and Frederick, Gettysburg, etc., who would appreciate this kind of music, and especially if it's done well.
Is it all oldies?
We were thinking about possibly a 1 to 3 mix of good oldies. So obviously this isn't going to appeal to many of our present listeners, but then we're not necessarily trying to appeal to them, but we don't want to alienate them either. We don't think we would at that time, of course.
We don't have any regular listeners now in midnight.
No, I know, but I mean our regular listeners in Westminster.
But there are people who stay up late or have to work all night and stuff like this, and from what I've heard of the quote big stations in Washington and Baltimore, they're missing stuff.
What it boils down to is I really think that there are two problems with this type of programming as it's presented on stations in the Baltimore, Washington area now. Number one, it's aimed specifically at an alienated segment of our population. I mean, the kids with the long hair who just hate their parents, and it's too often aimed at this type of population. We don't want to do that. That alienates too many people. I don't like to listen to a lot of this stuff they have. Number two, a number of these stations are either on frequencies which are greatly interfered with. For example, WKTK in Baltimore programs this type of music, and the kids and the young people, we don't want to aim towards the kids, but the young people from 20 to 35 years of age who'd like to listen to it often can't pick it up. Number two, there's a good station in Washington which programs music of this sort, but it's only 2.5 kilowatts effective radiated power. We think we could sell it pretty well after it got going, and we think it could be a moneymaker.
Would it require any increases in staff?
No.
Well, Joe and I are just proposing, at least to begin with, these 2 mornings a week. I think these would be the mornings in which we'd have the largest audience anyway.
Would it interfere with Joe's Saturday morning country?
Well, we had tentatively, in discussing the idea, proposed putting myself in the Saturday morning slot and Joe in the Sunday morning slot.
Sounds to me like they got enough to do. They want to. Maybe we can find some extra word around here. Good snow or something. Bob, what you were saying about this long-haired kid, I ran into a guy after I told Joe about it this morning. I didn't even know about this when I told you about it. But I took some calendars down to Tom Simpson yesterday. He sells these Christmas trees at Valentine's. He's got a boy working for him that, would scare the devil the way his hair is long, the whole bit. And he said to me, I heard a top song on WTTR. I said, well, that must have been a mistake. asked him that. I said, I guess you listen to CAO. He says, no. He says, I don't. He says, I listen to WTTR. He said, I wouldn't want to change one thing they're doing. One thing. He says, because they're doing it perfect as far as I'm concerned. Give me the local news, the kind of music I want, because I get tired of hearing that. Here was a kid, you know, long hair bit, and impressed me till I reached back and gave him a calendar. Anybody thinks like that will have it.
Well, yeah, good, but I understand that there are a number of people who don't think that way.
I'm just telling you this one.
Well, I know, it warms my heart to hear it, but...
I got a question. You bring in Baltimore and Washington, and why did you pick those two? Is it because they're close enough to them, or is there a particular trend in programming in that manner? Or you doesn't listen to me? Either one.
There's a vast population segment in the Baltimore, Washington area, and I
Carroll County.
this area.
Put Carroll County first. That's where we are. That's got to come first.
Carroll County, you know, southern Pennsylvania, Frederick County, etc. There's a vast segment of the population between the ages of, I'll say, 18 to 35. Joe and I don't anticipate programming this far out stuff, you know, with yelling and screaming and 20 minutes of solid weirdo guitar or something. We plan on some good contemporary music.
What's going to be the criteria you selected?
Well, our own taste, to tell you the truth. Our own experience in listening to and enjoying this type of music. It's pretty much, we pretty much had it in our minds to kind of leave it up to our own judgment. Joe and I feel responsible enough to do it well.
What's the influence of the so-called charts?
Influence of the charts? None whatsoever. In my part, I don't follow these.
Frankly, I think the charts are a bunch of garbage. They're run by Jews. They're run by organization people. When I say organization, this is
Who are trying to sell records, not any other purpose.
Fred Waring told Alva Finch just a week or so ago that he is so bitter towards the recording industry because the way it is being prostituted that he doesn't want to make another record. And this is a tragedy when you do have talent that cannot get exposed. And these are the things that irritate me to no end. I believe in freedom of speech and freedom of press. I think some of the publications that I have seen are not worthy of that protection of constitutional rights.
Well, Paul, this brings up a very interesting point. One of the gripes I have about stations which are noted for programming the type of music Joe and I have in mind seem to bend over backwards to please the record companies. And they'll play some of this far-out stuff that...
There's payola.
Yeah, I understand.
It's illegal. The FCC has investigated it on 2 occasions. There have been indictments. It still flourishes.
See, Spiro Wagner is the only guy in the country who got on the table.
WMAL-FM in Washington has for some time been noted for being a rather progressive radio station through most of their programming. Unfortunately, in the last 6 or 8 months, they've really gone downhill, and they've bent over backwards to try to, I guess, please everybody. You hear so much black jazz music.
Sounds terrible.
I personally don't like it, but we don't want to program that sort of thing. We don't feel that we have to spread ourselves so thin that we have to devote 3 songs an hour to jazz and 3 songs an hour to Fred Waring and 3 songs an hour to the Beatles and so forth.
I like the idea, but I worry about the transition of Dick Heron at night playing Mantovani, read the news headlines, and you get into Fats Domino. And then on the other end, at 5 o'clock in the morning when John comes on, with maybe Loretta Lynn after playing Elvis Presley.
I dare say that,
I don't know if we have to worry about transition because it's been done before with no apparent...
It's a point.
Of course, realizing my age, I have to sit here and I think to myself, why?
Why?
I think it's good.
Why?
I like the idea. But the transition is the only thing that bothers me.
okay, I think it can sell. With 50 kilowatts, I think we can really make it sell.
And
there aren't any other stations in the area which are either powerful enough or are on a fairly clear channel as we are in order to get into many of these areas effectively.
When you say sell, who's going to do it?
Joe and I had originally planned on attempting to do some of this ourselves.
Let me say something right here at this point. Nobody sells here until they have been around long enough to know what we're doing. We limit our selling effort to people who are so very familiar with what we're trying to do, and this only comes after a long period of being around here, a long period of learning, because the salesman on the street, and many stations don't consider it this way, they give them a rate card and say, go. And as a result, they're gone in a few weeks. We don't do it that way. We have people who are, I use the word responsible, not that you fellows aren't responsible, but people who have been so imbued with our policy that they know what the answers are in talking with people about us. And I don't mean to speak in any negative way about either of you, except your lack of experience at WTTR.
Well, Joe and I...
And I don't mean that you don't know how WTTR operates, but you don't yet, neither of you, nearly as well as I would like for you to if you were out on the street. If you were going into selling now, I wouldn't start a man on the street now until he had been indoctrinated by those of us around here till he wasn't a place on him. He could stick a pin without fooling. And there's a reason for that. It's because of what we have built in the 20 years.
Include agencies?
Agencies, we have no problem like that with that. If an agency sells something for us, it's because of what we are. And agencies are responsible generally, knowing the broadcast industry, they know the basic answers. And of course agencies know our format. We have a rep, Dolan and Associates, who supply information to agencies also. It's a different breed of cat than a new salesman going on the streets in Westminster or anywhere else for us. I just merely mention that as a point, so that you fellows' education can be continued with regard to our policy generally and so on.
If we do this, you have to establish listenership.
Well, we can't expect to sell anything until we do.
We understand that.
We will lose some of our old listeners by doing this, some of them just on principle. You know, my God, WTTR playing rock and roll is unheard of. And we will lose some. I personally think we'll probably pick up more listeners than we will lose.
Oh, I would think,
but our audience will change.
I would think so.
You do have an audience change throughout the day. That's
sure.
About 60 times.
Now, you see, fellas, how this discussion is going. There are pros and cons. I knew it would be things that I couldn't think of. Pros and cons.
As the FCC angle, people have complained, I'm sure, that we don't program enough toward kids, per se, as a group, that we've ignored them.
However, we have told the Commission we're going to continue to. And the Commission expects us to live up to our proposals. However, programming the type of music is not nearly as important as other things we do as far as from the Commission's viewpoint. Public affairs programming is community service directly. Of course, I was thinking about.
John, on your trivia quiz in the morning, how many calls would you say you get from kids?
Kids what age? Under 16?
Well, little kids, you know, I mean, you
Little
tell me
kids,
they're kids.
most all the time, the parents are telling the answer. You hear in the background, the parents are yelling the answers to them. Mostly just little kids, you know.
What would you say? A lot of kids are involved?
I'd say 3/4 of the calls will come from kids.
I see. They do the calling.
Yeah, look at it. Let's face it, they're not, they don't know the answers, but you know, they want to win the prize.
Well, it doesn't prove anything then, really.
Yeah, no idea.
Except that the parents at that time wanted to tell them what they have to listen to.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Well, of course, we don't want to aim our program at 12-year-olds either, Dave.
Yeah, I know, Bob. I'm not arguing. I'm just, the point I'm making is that some of the college, some of the high school kids do listen to us.
Oh, I'm not saying they don't. I listen to it occasionally.
Yeah.
I'm saying this to both of you, to all of you too. If I can get the thought back into my mind and say it. It has to do with responsible age. As we used to say in the days of radio soap operas, and those 14-year-old housewives out there, no matter how old they were. We have a responsibility in this business to lift the moral fiber of the nation. Sounds like I'm preaching a sermon. In these times, and in all times, broadcasters have a responsibility to their listeners, to the communities they serve. not just to report what happens only, not just to play what people want necessarily, but to try to upgrade the taste of all the public. If we don't, our nation and our world is going down the drain.
On their right.
Well, you can't give people what they want because they don't know what they want.
Well, this is largely true.
Perry Andrews, I don't know if any of you guys remember Perry Andrews. We used to be on BAL in the morning.
He does the wedding.
And he wouldn't play any requests because he says if I played requests, the people phoned in here, this program wouldn't be fit to listen to.
Oh, we don't plan to play any requests.
Well, I'm just telling you.
I'll tell you what I like to do. I like to hear a spec tape of what you plan to do. Put one together.
Okay, you want to hear it all the full
The
thing?
entire shooting match.
I would say that you wouldn't need to play the entire number.
Yes.
Well, that, in that entire number is some of this uplifting that you're talking about.
Russ,
Well, I mean, each of each song is what I'm saying. I mean, in the interest of time,
Kate pointed out something to me. It was advertised in Billboard. What's that, Melody, and that damn crappy thing about getting late? Or just
You know, it won't be tomorrow. It was in broadcast.
for it.
It's about this gal that gets laid and wants to know if the guy's going to love her tomorrow because she let him get in her pants last night.
and that's all been like that on WTTR within the last 2 weeks.
You're getting some on automation, Russ.
I don't remember which was on.
Yeah, the lyrics could be. Maybe we're very sensitive to the
Yes,
words.
we are, of course.
Mary in the morning, what's that about?
Angel.
Help me make it through the night.
Or Angel in the morning, yeah.
You see, there are nice melodies to some of these,
Seductive stuff.
but the words are,
Maybe we are extremely sensitive.
well, we should be, of course.
And this was
We're
one
in
of
the
the
business. It's our purpose, our job to be
As
sensitive.
I recall several years ago, the FCC said it was your responsibility for what you program.
Right.
And if there was any reference to any immoral acts or drugs, as the case was.
Well, we would also have to cut out Mutual's English letter spots. You know.
But there's not a one of those cosmetic spots that aren't suggested. There's not a one of them that any of them
The
run.
bars are being let down more and more. I remember when swearing first started, as I've mentioned many times before. It's when Eisenhower started to use damn. Before that, words like that were never used on the air. And then Ike, as Commander-in-Chief and President, finally, I think he, in some time, didn't give a damn, and that started it. Immediately after, everybody was saying damn.
It says right there in broadcasting that the television censors anymore are a little slow with the scissors.
Oh, yes.
And they don't mind letting a guy and gal go to bed and you see the rumple under the covers. They don't mind letting you see that. This is right there in broadcasting this week.
Now, this is something, fellas, all of you do not know the way I think. None of you know all the ways I think, but what I am may be different from what my ideals are for this business. I'm a human being with weaknesses, the same as we all have, or we wouldn't have to be here learning these lessons in life. But this responsibility we have, we must think about it. I'm not hitting you guys on the head, I'm thinking just generally. As I said a while ago, the world is going down the drain. Now, what the rate at which it's going down the drain is, I don't know. Whether we're going to be able to check it and keep rising, you know, in these dips and so on, for another 20 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, I don't know. But we're running into more and more problems that are the result of immorality, of all kinds. I don't mean sexual immorality only, although this, of course, is very predominant, because the bars are being let down, and they always are in times of crisis. And that's the emotional outlet. And these days, youth and sex, you think was only invented yesterday. As my brother-in-law said when he was 57 years old, I know it was here 57 years ago.
I was there last night at the University of Maryland's Student Union Building, on display by the women of the university. Had big letters, ragtime. The Woman's Monthly.
You see, this is a foul sort of thing. Poor taste. We need to lift the moral fiber. It's a bad thing. A man who works at the University of Maryland told me a couple of weeks ago when I rented the line, said, Russ, you wouldn't believe what I see down there. One of the professors the other day saw a couple in the hall screwing each other. He said, what can you do but run them out? I said, get out of here and not report them. What good was it done? And that's a terrible thing to have, you know, happening. Here's the age when the youngsters are so impressionable in college. You know, sex is a big deal. The creative force is running rampant in us all in these young years. It doesn't stop altogether at 58 either. But we need discipline by those who are in charge, because the youngsters will out in spite of it. But they need to be controlled. Children, and I say children in the, you know, in general, must be controlled, and those of you who have them know, or they will do things that will be harmful to themselves and others. It's just ignorance and the desires that we have as human beings that must be controlled by laws or something until we get wise enough to get the law within ourselves, and so few of us have it in so few ways. Well, all right, I didn't begin, I'm sorry. But you understand what we're saying now. Let's try to come to a kind of a recommendation here. Yay or nay? I told the fellas I didn't think we would do it, but that we would talk it over among ourselves and discuss it as thoroughly as we could before a definite yay or nay was given. What are the advantages of it? All right, I think the fellows have outlined that as best they can. Number one, it permits Joe and Bob to do something they want to do, and this is important, and it's appreciated. Number one, I say, that's number one. That's why they're doing it. They're not doing it to serve a bunch of listeners. They're doing it because they want to do it, right?
Yeah.
Sure, that's a secondary reason to serve a bunch of listeners who might not be being served by us. But number one, you want to do it. Fine. This is an indication of a good, healthy attitude, and we're grateful for that. All of us are, I'm sure, if we think about it. Because this indicates you're good employees. You got a little something in you besides moping around. Okay. Now, number two. Are we going to serve many people? Are we going to help anybody? Are questions that come to my mind. We're going to serve some people, obviously. Now, how many, and in what way, and is it worth the effort? You fellows do not know what that effort is. You have not worked the midnight to 5 regularly.
That's a long time. If it is one night.
Even once a week is too many times. You got a wife, and you don't have one, but time will come probably. You also have other responsibilities. It's your responsibility all the time to make sure the radio stations are playing, as you well know, and you don't have to say that, of course. As Kay mentioned a while ago, as far as work is concerned, if you want something more to do, I got some things. That's beside the point. You see, my feeling generally is I would hesitate to do it. Now, does any of the rest of you have any further thoughts? Pro or con?
I'd like to hear a sample, an hour sample. I could take home and play with my listening closely.
Now remember, when you make an hour sample, it's going to be produced the best they can do, and it won't be that way 2 weeks later.
Yes, it will.
I'll guarantee you it won't be.
It'll be pretty
I'm
close.
sorry, Joe. I don't mean to insult you. I've seen it happen so many times in 40 years, Joe. I've seen it happen so many times. I'll never forget the guy who wanted to go on the air with PI business in the Hillbilly station from midnight till 5 o'clock in the morning when we normally signed on there at that station. And so we started going around the clock. The engineering, we had 8 guys in the engineering department. At that time we had a control room man, the transmitter man out on the mountain, and the announcer. And that announcer was also a salesman. He got on there and he sold, fog lights. These were the kind. These were the plastic, with a rubber band on them that you put over your headlights. Then we had headlights that were, tear-shaped in the 40s, early 40s, late 30s, 30s. Plaques, Bibles, whatever. Well, it got to be an old song about 3rd week. He got some orders, but it wasn't worth the squeezing. And then there was the college people here who put on the program on WTTR for some time.
Sunday afternoons.
Petered out. Then there was a high school program we used to have regularly.
Saturday morning, 11:30.
Petered out. Fairly fast. They come Christmas, they could care less. Come back first year, that's the end of it. Maybe there'd be one person interested in that one. But what did it amount to in that case? All they played was the same numbers over again, and there was that ones that the kids wanted to play, and that the jukebox the top 40 lists said was top 40, and they played it, and that's what they played. And, it got pitiful. I don't mean to say you fellows are going to sound like that at all, but I know what it's like to try to work between midnight and 5 in the morning anytime, particularly after you've already worked a week. And it's in the midst of your... now, this is my impression of this thing. As Paul said, he'd like to hear a sample. Fine. You fellows want to produce a sample? I'll not say no today.
To tell you the truth, I think at once a week for each of us, it'd take a heck of a long time before I'd start to feel tired. I might at 4:30 in the morning feel physically tired, but
you don't start this thing, of course, either and run it for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 weeks. Once you put something like this on, it's forever. By that I mean it's a good long trial. You don't just do it.
Joe, I still run into people and say to me, why don't the TTR play some country and western music?
Yeah. Right.
See?
I had a Tuesday night out with the milk producers banquet. All right across the so my wife won't listen because you don't play. I said, where the hell is he been? I said, last year or so, I said, Joe, we have 3 hours.
I wish they were that when you say something like that.
It's one of those nights for me.
Yeah, they listen to FM all the time, probably. Don't know the AM's on the air.
No, he was the one that she was trying to pick up. She's a country and western.
ISE, probably.
And I said, well, we have 3 hours every morning, plus Saturdays for 6 hours. I didn't know that. And they live right up here at Keymark.
Yeah.
Paul, that 10% never gets the word on anything. You know that.
Hell yeah.
The world's coming to an end tomorrow. They never know it because... But they're going to know if you don't buy it, you can't buy it. Yeah, they couldn't get gas and they know something's wrong.
All right. That's all I got on my mind. Anybody want to say anything else about anything?
I just want to make the point that Joe and I would be the first to admit that there is a lot of rotten music out, which would fall in the category that he and I say in the general area, which he and I would want to play. And we do feel that the radio stations on the air now which play this type of thing play too much junk. We feel we could do a much better job. We feel we could be quite responsible towards the moral fiber of the people towards whom we're aiming the programming.
Excuse me, Bob. Sound like me 30 years ago, Bob. Go ahead, Paul.
Logistically speaking, you're figuring roughly 70 selections from midnight to 5, minimum.
Not necessarily. Some of these things go for 5 minutes or more. Some of the music
Well, I was thinking about 2.5 minutes in a bit.
It'll make them that short.
All right, so therefore reduce that down to 12 an hour, so you're talking 60 selections. Is there an adequate supply of the type that meets your standards to fill with variety?
Oh, I could start this weekend if I did a shift every night for 5 hours for 1 year. I could go through the records that I had, the music that I think is good, and never repeat it.
Are they stereo?
Yes, sir.
All of them, yeah. Joe has an extensive collection of music which he considers good. Joe and I are frankly quite appalled that some of the music comes in. I'm appalled by so many of these groups. I say so many, meaning a few of these groups I've heard which come on so strongly with what I call the death wish. Talk about death and getting killed and destroying, and this upsets me immensely. And a lot of the kids...
This is the emotional pitch. The emotional pitch. It's been going on forever. It's in religion, it's in music, and other things to advertise. The emotional pitch, regardless of what will sell. And you can sell death as easy as you can sell Christ. Or fog lights. You see, the same pitch is the same psychology. This is what I tell the ministers. Let's do it, short ones, several times a day, and get them, rather than talk for 10 or 15 minutes and lose 2/3 of them.
Here's what's in broadcast. This season TV regularly goes into the bedroom, although never any further than some fumbling under the sheets, with Sally Field and John Davidson as a married couple, the girl with something extra.
Some show.
What that has to do with what if it stays on or not.
Well, that's it. Joe and I are going to try to program away from this sort of thing, away from the Lord of
I understand your ideals, Bob, believe me.
It's our ideals. We certainly
How effective you can be with it, I wouldn't know, of course. And you don't know, really. The results will be there when the time comes.
I have my convictions, and we all do, and I would certainly plan on standing by them.
Sure, expected to. All right, we'll think about it some more. If you want to prepare a sample, we'll listen to it.
If you're going out selling a product, you have to know what you're selling. You don't sell from
Just
a
because
blank
it's
blank sheet of paper and say, Mister, that will be filled up with some of the more beautiful advertising copy. You won't do it that way. You go out and
yes, the salesman at WTTR must be able to do it all.
oftentimes you have to guide a person into a decision.
Remember, these guys have known it for 20 years. He's been doing it for a day or two, too.
You guide these people
John's
into
been
a
around for a
big
while. You guys have all been around a while. You know what the business is like. Joe, you've been around a while, too. Bob, shorter time than the rest of you, but you still know, you're learning. You know what these things are, but you, as yet, haven't been in the position where you had to satisfy 100 customers all the time. And this is difficult. That's why when the slightest error is made on one of them, it upsets the apple cart. You get 2 or 3 in a row, you got problems. We got problems always, but that's why we always try to make things right the first time if we can, because when we got to redo them, it takes time from something else. The amount of mental effort that goes into selling, copying, whatever, the guys run dry writing copy. We subscribe to 2 copy services. They're just for ideas. Try to do things. You'd think that a furniture ad would be easy to do. Well, so you're always peddling furniture, but you're always thinking of different ways to do it, different little things that will attract the audience. It's the game we're in. This is a negative thing, selling. It shouldn't be necessary, but it's a part of our economy. This is the point at which we are in the world.
Better raise your voice just a little bit louder than all the other noise that's aimed at poor old John Q. Citizen.
Bob over at that shopping center spot.
I would. All right. Thank you for your ears and your words, gentlemen.
Did you say that you do not want the entire selection recorded?
Well, Paul feels we ought to have the entire selection. What did you say?
I think so too, because that's going to be the whole back thing as a program.
All right. Well, yeah, prepare what you would think would be a typical hour. Well, we'll start the recorder now. So I'll come right listen to it.